You send a Slack message at 9 a.m. Nothing complicated. Just a question about a deadline, or a document you need reviewed, or a quick, does this look right? You see the little delivered checkmark. Then, a few minutes later, you see something worse, the read receipt. They saw it. They definitely saw it. And then, nothing. 1 hour passes. Then 2. Then 3. And somewhere around the 90-minute mark, a thought creeps into your head that has nothing to do with work. They're ignoring me. Not they're busy. Not they're in a meeting. Your brain, with absolute certainty, decides, they saw my message and chose not to respond because they don't respect me, or they're annoyed by me, or I said something wrong. If you've ever felt this, you're not dramatic. You're not insecure. You're human. And today I'm going to show you exactly why your brain turns a delayed Slack reply into a personal rejection, and the 3 things you can do to stop it from ruining your day. Let's start with the obvious villain, read receipts. In the old days, and I mean like 2010, you sent an email and you had no idea if the person read it. They might have opened it immediately. They might have opened it 3 days later. You didn't know, so your brain couldn't spiral. Then Slack happened. Then Teams happened. Then every messaging app on Earth decided that what we really needed was the ability to know exactly when someone saw our message and chose not to reply. This is a psychological weapon, and we handed it to ourselves. Here's what happens in your brain when you see that read receipt and get no response. Your anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain that detects conflict and social rejection, lights up like a Christmas tree. It can't tell the difference between my coworker hasn't replied yet, and my coworker is actively excluding me from the tribe. And that last part is key. Because your brain evolved for tribal survival, not corporate Slack. For most of human history, if someone in your tribe ignored you, that was a genuine threat. Exclusion meant less food, less protection, less chance of survival. So your brain developed an extreme sensitivity to social silence. It treats being ignored as a danger signal. The problem? Your brain doesn't know that Slack was invented in 2013. It thinks your coworker leaving you on read is equivalent to being left behind at the hunting grounds. So when 3 hours pass with no reply, your brain isn't thinking about project timelines. It's thinking about survival. And it panics. But it's not just the read receipt. It's the uncertainty. Here's a psychological principle that explains almost everything about remote work anxiety. Uncertainty is more stressful than bad news. Studies show that people prefer knowing something bad is going to happen over not knowing what's going to happen. The waiting is worse than the outcome. When you send a Slack message and get no reply, you're in a state of pure uncertainty. Your brain hates this. It needs closure. It needs to know where it stands. And since your brain is a storytelling machine, it does the only thing it can, it makes up a story. And the story it makes up is almost never neutral. Your brain doesn't think, they're probably in a meeting. It thinks, I must have annoyed them. It doesn't think, they're probably overwhelmed. It thinks, they don't think my message is important. This is called negativity bias. Your brain is wired to assume the worst possible explanation because, evolutionarily, assuming the worst kept you alive. The person who heard a rustle in the bushes and thought tiger survived more often than the person who thought, probably just the wind. So when your Slack goes unanswered, your brain defaults to the tiger. Every single time. And remote work makes this worse because you have no context. In an office, if someone didn't reply to your email, you could glance over and see they were on a call, or talking to the boss, or clearly swamped. You had data. At home, you have nothing. Just a silent screen and a brain that desperately needs a narrative. So it writes one. And the narrative is always, it's about me. Now let's talk about why this hurts more when it's your boss, or a senior coworker, or someone whose approval you need. When you message someone higher in the hierarchy and they don't reply, your brain doesn't just feel ignored. It feels powerless. In face-to-face communication, power dynamics are constantly negotiated through body language, eye contact, and conversational turn-taking. You can tell when someone is listening to you. You can tell when they're dismissing you. You get real-time feedback. In async messaging, all of that disappears. You're just staring at a screen, waiting for someone with more power than you to acknowledge your existence. And every minute that passes feels like confirmation that they don't have to. This is why the Slack silence hits different at 9 a.m. on a Monday than it does at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. In the morning, you're already anxious. You're already wondering if you matter. And an unanswered message becomes evidence for the worst-case scenario you've been quietly building in your head. The research on this is clear. A study from a University of California found that delayed responses in digital communication activate the same neural pathways as social rejection. Your brain literally processes a late Slack reply the same way it processes being left out of a group conversation. That's not weakness. That's biology. Here's something nobody talks about. Most people are terrible at async communication. Not because they're mean. Because they're busy, distracted, and managing their own anxiety. Think about your own behavior. How many Slack messages have you read, mentally drafted a reply, and then forgotten to actually send it? How many times have you thought, I'll answer that after this meeting, and then never did? The average knowledge worker receives over 100 Slack messages per day. They're not ignoring you. They're drowning. But your brain doesn't care about their inbox. Your brain only knows that your message went unanswered. And because your brain is egocentric, not in a bad way, but in a I can only experience the world through my own eyes way, it assumes the silence is personal. I call this the reply-to-thinking ratio. For every message someone receives, they probably think about replying 10 times before they actually do it. They read it in a meeting. They think, I'll handle that later. They see it again while eating lunch. They think, right, I need to respond. Then they get pulled into something else. To you, it's 3 hours of silence. To them, it's 3 hours of intending to reply. But you can't see their intentions. You can only see your screen. So how do you stop a delayed Slack reply from ruining your entire morning? You can't control when people reply. But you can control the story your brain tells while you wait. Here are 3 mindset shifts that actually work. Shift 1. Default to context, not character. When someone doesn't reply, your brain assumes it's about who they are, uncaring, dismissive, annoyed. Instead, train yourself to assume it's about their context, busy, overwhelmed, in back-to-back meetings. This is called attribution theory. We tend to attribute other people's behavior to their personality, while attributing our own behavior to our circumstances. When we don't reply, it's because we're swamped. When they don't reply, it's because they don't like us. Flip the script. Until proven otherwise, everyone is as overwhelmed as you are. Shift 2. Set your own response windows. Don't let your emotional state depend on someone else's timeline. Decide in advance, if I don't hear back in 4 hours, I'll follow up. Until then, I'm not allowed to think about it. This is a technique called stimulus control. You're creating a boundary between the trigger, the unread message, and your reaction, the anxiety. The 4-hour window gives your brain a rule to follow, which reduces the uncertainty spiral. And when you do follow up, make it neutral. Not, hey, did you see my message? Which sounds accusatory. Instead, no rush, just bumping this in case it got buried. Shift 3. Separate the message from the meaning. The most important skill in remote work is learning that a delayed reply is not a referendum on your value. It's just data. It means someone hasn't replied yet. That's it. Your brain wants to add layers of meaning, rejection, disrespect, inadequacy. But those layers are fiction. The only fact is, no reply yet. When you feel the spiral starting, say this out loud, this is about their schedule, not my worth. It sounds cheesy. It works because it interrupts the narrative your brain is building. The truth is, async communication was supposed to make work less stressful. No more hovering outside someone's office. No more interrupting meetings. Just send a message, and they'll get to it when they can. But we didn't account for the human brain. We didn't account for the fact that waiting feels like rejection, that silence feels like danger, and that a little green read checkmark can ruin an entire morning. You're not crazy for feeling this. You're not immature. You're a human being using tools that were designed for speed, not for psychology. So the next time you're staring at Slack, watching the minutes tick by, remember, their silence is not your story. It's just a message that hasn't been answered yet. And you have better things to do than wait for permission to feel okay. Drop a comment. What's the longest you've waited for a Slack reply, and what did your brain tell you in the meantime? Mine was 6 hours, and by hour 4 I was convinced I'd been fired. Subscribe for more on the psychology of remote work. Next week, the Sunday scaries are worse when you work from home. Here's why. See you then. Close the app.